My grandfather passed away just a few weeks after I was born. Never met the guy. Never knew what he looked like. When I was 5 years old, I started to see this man in our rocking chair. I called him the rocking chair man. My parents thought it was that imaginary friend stage. But it started to bug them when I told them every single day. They finally questioned me about it. And I told them every detail I could remember, and finally they showed me a picture of a man. This man was my grandfather. To this day, and I'm 22 now, every time I dream, he is in the background somewhere. I remember when I dreamed about my high school graduation, and I looked in the stands and I saw him standing there next to my parents. I like to think that he's just watching out for me and being there when he's not really there. Has this happened to anyone else? Am I weird? Or is this more normal than we realize? About 10 years ago, when I was 8, maybe 9, I was visiting my dad at his house. My stepmother was in the kitchen, and I was in the family room. We both saw my father wearing a red flannel shirt and blue jeans walk around the corner from the living room and start walking up the stairs. I followed him and called his name as he went up the stairs. He turned back and looked at me, got to the top of the stairs, and just went around the corner. I called his name again. Then from the living room, my dad popped his head up over the couch and asked what I wanted. He had been asleep on the couch the entire time, yet both my stepmother and I clearly saw him wearing the clothes he had on the whole day and all, going from the living room up the stairs. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. Both my stepmother and I still remember it and talk about it frequently to this day. It was in broad daylight, so it wasn't just some uncanny illusion of the night. I still have no explanation for why or how this happened. Hello. I'm writing this while it's fresh, because it recently happened. Just a small bit of backstory. My mother passed in 2010 at age 57. She had a heart attack. Now, it must be said that I myself do not smoke. No one in my home does. Never have. But my mom was a 2-pack-a-day smoker. I absolutely hate the smell of cigarettes. When she passed, she left behind a partner of 24 years. She really loved him till her last day. The last 3 days have been interesting, to say the least. There have been 3 different instances that I cannot explain. Once, while cleaning my room, I had some things placed on my dresser to be put away. It had been there almost one day without any problems. I was in the other side of the room and watched a stack of laundry be pushed from the dresser onto the floor. I thought, okay, this is strange. They were folded neatly, stacked nicely, and it wasn't a high stack on a very flat level surface. It wasn't like it tipped over. There was no breeze. There was no explanation for this. They were sturdy and they were level. Now, same day, a little bit later, I have a hat collection that I have hung up on a wall for display. I watched 3 of them in the same row slide to the side as if someone took their hand and brushed them aside. The first one ended up falling on the floor. The others just sat there and rocked back and forth. Then, one by one, the second one fell, as did a moment later the third one. I've had the awful smell of cigarettes in my nose for the last 3 days also. It's so bad that I've almost gotten sick. If I leave my house, it immediately quits. If you're a non-smoker and not used to the smell, it's absolutely awful, and it's unmistakable. After this, I got the information that her partner was dying in the hospital. So, now I'm just resting, taking it easy still with that stinking smell. I get a call from my daughter that he just passed. I kid you not, within 1 minute after the call, I said out loud, "Mom, he's gone now, go get him." And the smell immediately stopped and hasn't come back so far. Before this, and because of this, I know spirits are real. I've experienced it twice so far, and I just thought I'd put this into the world. Rest in peace, Mom, and you too, Sonny, if you're listening. So my half-brother is the honest, Christian, ADHD type of guy, but completely truthful. in just about every way. We'll call him Steve. When he was younger, between 7 and 10, he was visiting his mother, stepfather, and brother in their family home in the northern Michigan woods. He was sharing a room with his brother. At night, Stevie slept on the floor next to his brother's bed. It's just a basic room, twin bed, headboard against the wall, window, closet, wooden dresser, wooden floors, etc. In the middle of the night, Steve woke up, laying on the floor next to the bed in his usual spot. As he peered below the bed to the other side, he saw something unusual. In the trail of moonlight cast upon the floor through the window was a pair of dirty, gray feet. Stranger yet was how quickly and silently the feet began to move. Steve's heart started pounding as the feet raced around the corner of the bed without a sound. Steve shot up from the floor before the feet could make the turn that would leave them face to face, or perhaps feet to face. As he jumped up and looked where the feet should be, there was nothing. I don't know why this has always creeped me out so much, but it always has. When he retells this story, he doesn't even seem bothered, just intrigued, just curious. He has many creepy stories, but this one just rings true. You can see it in his eyes that it really happened. My younger sister and I would always end up sleeping together in the living room with the lights on after he would tell this story. Maybe someday I'll share more of his stories, and some of my own, but this one just creeps me out. I was 17, asleep in my bed. I felt the corner of my bed dip, and I kept my eyes closed, thinking, someone kicked my bed to wake me up. For whatever reason, I thought to myself that if I just pretend to be asleep, maybe they will let me get a few more minutes of sleep while I was waking up. Then I felt the bed dip more, and I felt someone crawling up towards me and straddling me. At this point, I'm fully awakened, 100%, no question. And the only person who would do that was my girlfriend, so I said her name, my eyes still closed, thinking she would just crawl in next to me, realizing that I was awake. But no answer. And about then, I felt something was horribly wrong. For no reason, the dread washed over me. I had that sensation you get when someone is close to your face, that weird sound-blocking silence when someone is in your personal space. When I said her name again and there was no reply, I immediately swung with a right hook so hard that the momentum literally made me fall out of bed. I fully expected to connect with someone, with the person I felt straddling me. And then imagine my shock and confusion as I was tumbling out of bed that I missed. I must have missed, I thought. With my adrenaline coursing through my veins, I looked around in the dark for whoever it was that I needed to fight. Flipping on the lights as fast as possible, there was no one there. It was about 3:20 in the morning, if I remember correctly, and I did not go back to sleep that night. There was no one in the room. No one left. There was no time for them to leave. What scared me the most is I was awake. I was not dreaming at all at that point. There's no question in my mind. It's the only reason I've had in my life to give me thought that there might be something to these paranormal experiences being reported around the world. Honestly, it creeped me out just thinking about it long enough to write it down again. I hope you liked it. Sorry it's not longer. So I'm kinda trash at starting out stories and stuff, but here we go. So, ever since I was little, I always feel like I'm being watched in my room, especially in the dark, and I hear a lot of noises coming from the stairs in my house and the ceiling. Above our ceiling is the attic, so I always had this idea when I was young that there must be some sort of a ghost that lived up there. And this ghost must come down the stairs at night. But to be honest, I now just think that there is multiple ghosts on multiple rooms. I also used to keep my dog and cat in my room with me, and I swear they could hear this stuff too. Their ears would perk up, and they would react just the same as I. It felt like they were being watched as well. I could feel it, and I could see they would feel it. They were always on edge. But upon leaving my room, completely fine, even as in writing this, my current dog is staying super close to me, which she normally doesn't do unless we get that feeling that we're being watched. But I digress back to the story. I also get sleep paralysis a lot, and struggle to sleep often, so I remember that this still happens. It's crazy waking up in a state of paralysis and seeing a being not anything like a human, and just all my biggest fears rolled into one, just eating me. It's like I can't see it because sometimes my eyes are just glued shut, but I can feel it every time. And eventually, when I could move my fingers, and then my toes, and then suddenly I would just spring up and have to get my day started with that being my first experience waking in the morning. And yeah, that's just my house. It's not terrible, just creepy. It's something I've grown used to. Also, I want to say that just a few weeks ago I was playing some Xbox with my friend, but I didn't have a mic, so we FaceTimed and we were speaking about this exact subject. And as we were talking, whenever I would say the words ghost, demon, or Satan, the video would glitch out, as would the audio. He said it was happening on his end as well. He could see it breaking in and out on his phone. He said that he even saw a face break through. So I don't know if he was trolling me or not, but I do trust him. And at this point I wouldn't be surprised. It's absolutely horrifying. I can't sleep. I can't be awake. I can't even enjoy my pets in my own home. My life feels like it's not mine anymore. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to begin. I figured I'd start here. Can anyone help? It was an October evening, not too far off from Halloween. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The evening was slowly creeping by, so I decided to go to the corner store. It was only 3 blocks. Shouldn't be much trouble, right? Well, during my walk, I see the occasional person putting up Halloween decorations, and kids playing in their yards. But this story is about something far more sinister. I remember seeing 2 teens about age 14 knocking on a door asking to use the phone, which, of course, I thought was weird because most teens these days have phones. As I kept walking, they stopped and stared at me for a short moment. Immediately, I felt the blood in my veins chill. I have no idea why at that point, but I felt so creeped out that I hurried to the next block. And the next block seemed fine, until I looked behind me and saw those 2 teens were following me. I took off, sprinting to the store at this point. I saw the sign for the store, and relief immediately washed over me. I opened the door and I told the cashier about what happened on the way there. He looked at me, slightly creeped out, and told me a story about this happening to him in his hometown, and how they found him the day he left, and asked for his help in an emotionless voice. He also told me he never agreed to help. He then told me another story, but at that point I was no longer paying attention because they were standing at the door asking to be let in. The cashier immediately freaked out, as did I, and he ran and locked the door. Teens never seemed to waver or leave. They wouldn't step away from the door. We were there for an hour. The cashier and I were ready to fight our way out, but instead he took me out the back. The one teen came around the back just as the door shut behind us. Immediately he said, in a completely monotone voice, "Can you help me?" He was closing in on us, and his eyes, they were black as a starless night. They were peering right into my soul. I couldn't help but gaze into his eyes. The terror. I can't remember too much of what happened next, but I do recall the sounds of struggle. When I came to, the cashier was struggling with both teens. He was calling out to me for help. I ran towards them, grabbed him by his collar, and pulled him between the 2, and knocking them over in the process. I didn't look back until I was near my house. The cashier was gone, but the teens were still following behind, running impossibly fast. There's no way they could have kept up with me. They were on the ground when I started. I'm in good shape, too. I ran into my house, closed all the blinds, locked the doors, and turned the music up. I tried to find and thank the cashier later for saving my life that day, for locking them out and for putting up a fight, but he didn't show up for work after that. I asked his boss, and he told me he called over the phone and just outright quit. He said he was moving. He didn't want to be here anymore. He To this very day, I sometimes feel the fear of those eyes watching me as I drive to work. I sometimes look out my window and swear I see them watching my house from a couple blocks away. I feel them just waiting for their next chance. This incident took place about 22 years ago. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We were small-town newlyweds from the Midwest. We moved cross-country to Phoenix, Arizona, so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and new to city living, I habitually answered the door without a second thought. But never again after this. The first thing that should have tipped me off to the peculiarity of this situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 in the morning. The second thing that should have dawned on me is this kid had to reach over a rather tall patio gate to unlatch and open it. Even the knock at the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work. Pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken with an inexplicable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him. Teenager, average height, average build. Knee-length black leather coat, short black hair and sunglasses. But sunglasses at 6 a.m. struck me as odd. And even more odd, he was eating an apple. He was very polite and asked if he could come in and warm up. Of course I said no, closed the door and slid the security chain in place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in and warm up. No, I'd reply, and attempted to close the door. Before the door could shut, he put his hand out, stopping the door on its hinges. He looked me directly in my eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, "Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?" "Forget that," I replied, albeit a little confused. "Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police." Now at that, he took a moment to let this information sink in. He lowered his glasses, revealing his eyes as black as obsidian, and he said, "No, you won't be calling anybody." At that moment, I forced the door closed. It took all my strength. This kid wasn't very big. He shouldn't have had that much strength to him. I locked it and called out to my wife. This time, she was scared shitless hiding in the bedroom, all jacked up on adrenaline. I ripped the curtains back to look out the window next to the door, but he was gone. Absolutely no trace of him. And so I go out on the patio to check the gate and make sure he's not still there. It was latched from the inside, and as I turned to enter the house, that's when I noticed the half-eaten apple laying on the ground. It really did happen. The apple was proof. Just start by saying straight away that I'm a firm believer in the supernatural. From a young age, I've had experience with it, and it's become a casual thing to me. I'm fully aware of hoaxes and people just wanting views and attention on the internet, but I do believe there is truth in some of what's out there. My girlfriend, not so much. She's never really interacted or had experience with anything supernatural, and things she says she has experienced as a child, she's just shaken off as a child's imagination. The following experience happened less than 24 hours ago as of writing this letter, and it made her question all of this. To set the scene, we were hanging out with a good friend of ours who we both loved dearly. It was about 3 a.m. when she asked us to walk her home, being that she lived about 30 or so minutes away by foot, and we were more than happy to help her feel safe and escort her home. During the walk, me and my girlfriend had our first dispute of our relationship. It was something petty, but being as it was our first one, we both got rather riled up and raised our voices probably louder than we should. We got our friend home, and a few minutes after dropping her off, we hugged it out and admitted we were both in the wrong and moved on. That being said, we were still a little at odds, but only because it was the first time we'd ever conflicted in such a way. This is where it now gets interesting. Partway through the walk back, I'd offered that if my girlfriend wasn't comfortable, I would just stay at my place tonight, rather than back to her dad's like we had originally planned. Following this, we began approaching this long and tall hedge, that other side of this leading out into the fields and forestry areas. When we got close, I heard something on the other side of the hedge, rustling, like twigs snapping, leaves being pushed aside. Naturally, I kind of thought nothing of it, just assumed it was perhaps another person, because our town is known for its drunken bums that lurk in the dark hours of the morning. We both stopped in front of the hedge as my girlfriend wanted to roll a cigarette, stressed from the argument. I stand in front of her, and in the split moment that I had my back to her, there was suddenly a jet black and beautiful cat behind her. Now, disclaimer, I love black cats. I love cats in general, but especially black cats. I find them beautiful. I don't agree with the stigma around them, that they're just bad luck. My girlfriend also loves cats, perhaps more than I. She doesn't shut up about them. Basically lives and breathes for them. My girlfriend then proceeded to see the cat and swing around, happily seeing this lovely black kitty for her pet. And the moment she moved, I had the most sickening feeling in my chest. The hairs all across my body stood on end, almost as my fight or flight instinct went into overdrive. Something wasn't right. I immediately tell my girlfriend to stop. She looks at me in confusion as she gets closer to it, but I tell her again to stop and walk towards me. She was confused, but thankfully she listened to me. She got close, and I immediately began walking with her home, checking over my shoulder and looking at this cat. It had followed her about a foot as she left, but then almost immediately reset, moving back to the exact same place on the pavements in the exact same position. Like, it just blinked right back. Now, obviously, I know there's something abnormal about this, right? So, it was just some rustling, a black cat, and a bad feeling. I could have been mistaken, but it seemed to reset. But what followed solidified that I had made the right choice. As we moved away, there was suddenly a blood-curdling, distorted, and seemingly painful hiss from behind the hedge. I have no way to fully explain to you all just how awful this noise was. How I could feel it shift through my bones as this deformed and disfigured hiss moved through the air. I quickened my pace and pulled my girlfriend with me. On the way back, I explained why I did it, stating about the supernatural, and despite knowing her view on it all, that she just needed to trust me on this. She was skeptical, but trusted me enough to hear me out at least. We get back to her dad's and sit down, smoking a cigarette and discussing in comfort what had just happened. And I talk about mimics, goatmen, wendigos, all of it. My girlfriend, who was skeptical at first, goes pale. And I mean deathly pale. And it's then that she tells me about the cat and what it was like when she was close to it. Apparently this cat, it made no sound. Not even that of it breathing, and the air around it just felt cold. She proceeded to talk to me more about the area of town we had just walked through. I had lived in that town for a while, but I'd never really ventured out of my comfort zone, just sticking to the town center and many surrounding area. She, however, had lived there all of her life, and had moved around it multiple times by both herself and with family. Apparently the road we were going down, with the hedge and open areas on the other side, is well known for many disappearances. Many missing reports of people and pets in the town are always noted as last seen in or around that area. As well as this, my girlfriend once had an apartment near there, and she said that her older neighbors would tell her not to be out after dark, as people almost always went missing, and frequently it happened after dark. But not always. Now, don't get me wrong, this could have all been nothing. If I was hearing this story from someone else, I would be poking holes in it and stating how it could be numerous other things. But trust me, this was something else. Maybe it wasn't a mimic or a goatman or wendigo or something as famous as that. But whatever the hell this thing was, it was not human, and it was not a cat. We were up until 5:30 talking about what had just happened, and just how strange this cat was. She was telling me what she knows about the location, and despite maybe being paranoid, we called our friend saying how we believe it's best that she always gets home after dark from now on. Her girlfriend, and how the strange cat appears at the hedge where we had also stopped. And she also went to pet it, and got the same bad feeling in her body. She started walking, and after that, she suddenly heard a horrifying and deadly hiss from behind the hedge that didn't sound natural in any form. Is this just coincidence? Could it have happened twice? I told you the cat zapped back like it reset. Is it possible that this is just a spirit hit on repeat, just replaying over and over? I did go back once, and I heard the sound again. This time I didn't see the cat. I plan to go back and get more evidence, but I don't know what to do. I don't know whether I should look into this more, or just leave it alone. Is it just a cat? And if it is just a cat, is it okay to investigate this? I had just turned 22, and my parents had just sold their house and purchased a place out in the country. On the property there was a big shed not far from the house that I decided to turn into my place. Now, I felt kind of uncomfortable in the shed sometimes, but my dog kept me company, so it really wasn't bad. Anyway, I had been there maybe 2 weeks, and one night when I'm on my computer, with my dog asleep at my feet, I needed to go pee. So I get up, go outside, and start to pee. It's a beautiful, clear night. The stars were incredible. Next thing I hear, the shed door slam behind me. I turn immediately and try to open it, but it won't budge. Now, from inside the shed, I can hear my dog start to growl. Quietly at first, but then louder. Now he's barking, and I'm panicking trying to get the door open. All I could think was that someone went in behind me and slammed the door to lock me out. I must mention that I'm 6'5", I'm well built, I play sports, but even ramming my full weight into the door, it wouldn't open. So I'm really starting to panic by now as my dog's barks turned into whines and then whimpering. Then silence. With all my might, I slammed the door and it flies open. The light that was on is now off, and inside it's pitch black. It wouldn't turn back on, and I was in complete darkness. I couldn't see my dog anywhere, and as I stumbled around trying to find some sort of a flashlight or anything, I finally found one. I picked it up, I turned it on. I wasn't prepared for what I saw next. My dog had literally squished itself into the furthest, darkest corner of the room, eyes closed and shaking violently. I immediately moved towards him. As soon as I got within reach of him, he leapt at me into my arms and wouldn't move. It was like he was hugging me. I picked him up, and I swear I've never ran so fast in my life. I've never stepped foot back in that shed again, and my dog won't even go anywhere near that part of the property anymore. I don't know what happened in that shed that night, but I'll never forget it. I know it wasn't normal, perhaps paranormal, but I'll never forget it.